Ambassador Michael Reynolds took a deep breath as the massive doors of the Grand Chamber opened before him. His hands were steady but his heart pounded against his ribs. 20 years he'd spent in diplomatic service. 20 years of careful words and delicate negotiations. He'd handled trade disputes, border conflicts, and cultural misunderstandings. But this was different. This was everything humanity had been working toward since the day they discovered they weren't alone in the universe. The chamber stretched out like a vast amphitheater carved from living crystal. Representatives from 47 different species sat in ascending rows, each one stranger than the last. Some breathed oxygen like him. Others sat in specialized atmospheric bubbles. A few didn't seem to breathe at all. At the very center, elevated above everyone else, sat the Tribunal of Five. These were the eldest civilizations in known space, the ones who'd been traveling between stars when humanity was still figuring out fire. Michael walked forward, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. He carried no weapons, no guards, nothing but a small data pad with his prepared speech. Earth had decided to come in peace to show trust. He could feel thousands of eyes on him, some curious, some dismissive, some openly hostile. He'd practiced his speech 1,000 times. His daughter Lisa had helped him rehearse it over video calls. His son Tommy had made him repeat it until he could say it backwards. Jennifer, his wife, had listened to every version with endless patience. She was Earth's most decorated diplomat herself, and she told him just last night that he was ready. That humanity was ready. Michael reached the speaker's platform and cleared his throat. The chamber fell silent. Honored Council, he began, keeping his voice steady and clear. Humanity has demonstrated our commitment to peace over these past 20 years. We have followed every protocol, respected every boundary, and proven ourselves worthy of. Silence, primitive. The word cut through the air like a blade. Michael's voice died in his throat. The speaker was rising from the Bruton delegation section, and Michael felt his blood run cold. War Commander Drex was a massive figure, easily 8 feet tall, covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed with old bloodstains. The Brutons were the Council's enforcers. When species stepped out of line, when rebellions needed crushing, when examples needed to be made, they sent the Brutons. The Council grows tired of your presence here, Drex said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber. He began descending the steps toward Michael, each footfall heavy with menace. You humans come here with your tiny ships and your primitive technology, begging for a seat at our table. But what do you offer? You have no fleet worthy of mention. No technology we don't already possess. No resources we need. You have no reason to exist in our space. Michael's mind raced. This wasn't supposed to happen. The protocols were clear. Diplomatic proceedings were sacred, protected by laws older than human civilization. He glanced at the tribunal, hoping for intervention, but they sat frozen, watching. Other species around the chamber shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke up. Commander Drex, Michael said, fighting to keep his voice level. This is a diplomatic proceeding. You can't just. He never finished the sentence. The plasma bolt hit him square in the chest. There was no pain at first, just surprise. Michael looked down and saw the smoking hole where his heart used to be. His data pad clattered to the floor. His knees buckled. The crystal floor rushed up to meet him, and his last thought was of Jennifer, of Lisa, of Tommy, of the Earth he'd tried so hard to represent. Michael Reynolds, father of 2, husband for 23 years, Earth's most decorated diplomat, was dead before his body settled on the cold floor. Drex holstered his plasma weapon with casual indifference. That is the Bruton answer to Earth's petition for membership. The chamber exploded into chaos. Some species jumped to their feet, shouting protests. Others remained frozen in shock. A few nodded approvingly. The tribunal called for order, their ancient voices trying to restore control, but Michael noticed they made no move to condemn what had just happened. No move to arrest Drex. No move to do anything at all except restore the appearance of civility. The recording of Michael's death reached Earth's diplomatic command in less than an hour. The message traveled through quantum relays, arriving with perfect clarity. Every detail captured. Every moment preserved. Jennifer Reynolds sat in the command center when they brought her the footage. She was supposed to be coordinating Earth's response to Michael's speech, preparing celebration protocols for when he returned home victorious. Instead, she watched her husband die. She watched it once. Twice. By the 17th viewing, her face had gone completely blank, all emotion locked away somewhere deep inside. Admiral James Cortez, head of Earth's military operations, had been her friend for decades. He'd served with her on her first diplomatic mission. He'd been at her wedding. He'd held her babies. Now he gently took the tablet from her trembling hands. "Jenny," he said softly, using the name only close friends could. "The media is going crazy. The government needs you to make a statement. People need to hear from—" "No." Her voice was cold. Colder than the space between stars. Colder than anything James had ever heard from her. She pulled the tablet back and typed 4 words. Just 4. She didn't explain them. Didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. She hit transmit, and the message shot out across space to every Bruton communication relay simultaneously. "You have 72 hours. War Commander Drex stood in the strategy room of his fortress on Drexos Prime, surrounded by his top military officers. The message from Earth had arrived 30 minutes ago, and he couldn't stop laughing. His subordinates joined in, their deep voices filling the chamber with mocking amusement. "The humans have issued an ultimatum," Drex announced, projecting the message on the main screen for everyone to see. Those 4 words glowed in the center. "They demand we surrender or face consequences." Can you imagine? These primitives think they can threaten the Bruton Dominion. Captain Vorn, his second-in-command and a veteran of 300 planetary conquests, stepped forward with a data pad. "Commander, should we even bother responding to this nonsense?" "Show me their capabilities first," Drex said, still grinning. "I want to see what kind of force thinks it can challenge us." Vorn activated the holographic display, and Earth's military profile appeared in the air before them. The data was compiled by Council Intelligence, the same intelligence network that had kept the Brutons informed about every potential threat for centuries. "According to our records, humanity operates 43 warships," Vorn read off. "All of them use primitive fusion drive systems. Their largest vessel is barely 300 meters long. Their weapons are conventional kinetics, some explosive missiles and low-yield atomic devices. By our standards, they're still using Stone Age technology wrapped in metal." The other officers chuckled. One of them spoke up. 43 ships? We have more vessels in our home defense fleet alone. When was this intelligence gathered? Drex asked, though he already suspected the answer. Vorn checked the file. First contact. 20 years ago. The Council performed a standard assessment when humanity announced their presence. There's been no update since then because, well, they were deemed insignificant. Drex nodded with satisfaction. 20 years was plenty of time to build a few more ships, sure, but not enough to become a real threat. The Brutons commanded 6,000 warships, each one equipped with plasma cannons powerful enough to crack a planet's crust. They had weapons that could boil oceans and shields that could withstand stellar radiation. Earth's tiny fleet would evaporate like morning frost under a hot sun. "Ignore the message," Drex ordered. "Let them waste their 72 hours. When nothing happens, they'll learn their place in the galaxy." Meanwhile, thousands of light-years away on Harmony's Edge Station, Council Director Elena was not laughing. The Whisper species didn't laugh much anyway, their delicate frames and soft-spoken nature making them natural diplomats rather than warriors. But right now, Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in her 200 years of service. Genuine fear. She'd been trying to reach Earth's government for 16 hours straight. Every communication channel, every diplomatic line, every emergency frequency. Nothing. Complete silence. It was like humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy. No responses, no acknowledgements, not even automated messages. Just empty static. "Director," her aide called out urgently from the sensor station. "We're picking up unusual readings." Elena moved quickly to his side, her multiple sensory organs focusing on the display. "What kind of readings?" "Ships emerging from slip space near the Bruton borders. Multiple signatures. Very powerful ones." Elena's blood ran cold. "Earth vessels." The aide worked the controls frantically, trying to get a clear reading. "Unknown. The signatures don't match anything in our database. We've cataloged every known vessel type in the galaxy, but these—" "Director, these are completely new designs." "How many?" Elena asked, though part of her didn't want to know the answer. The aide's fingers trembled as he expanded the scan range. "Scanning now. 200 contacts. Now wait. 500. 700. He looked up at her, his expression one of disbelief. "Director, there are thousands of them. They're appearing all along the Bruton border in coordinated positions." Elena grabbed the communication panel. "Give me the tribunal. Now. And try to contact the Bruton military command. They need to know what's—" "Director." Another aide called out. "We're detecting similar formations near other Bruton territories. Whatever this is, it's not a small operation. This is a full-scale military deployment. Across the vast darkness of space, humanity's true fleet materialized like ghosts becoming real. For 20 years, these ships had maintained absolute silence, hiding in the empty spaces between stars, waiting. Every vessel was equipped with stealth technology that made them invisible to standard sensors. Every captain had orders that were opened only if Earth's diplomats were ever harmed. Now those orders were active. Admiral James Cortez stood on the bridge of the USN Retribution, Earth's first dreadnought-class vessel. The ship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons the Council had never seen. Around him, holographic displays showed the tactical situation in real time. 2,000 ships under his direct command, each one positioned with mathematical precision around key Bruton targets. Lieutenant Kyle Foster, young but capable, worked his station with focused intensity. Admiral, we're receiving confirmation beacons from 2nd and 3rd fleets. All vessels report ready status. Systems are green across the board. Total count. James asked, though he already knew the number by heart. Kyle double-checked his display. 6,400 vessels, sir. Every single one awaiting your order. 6,000 ships. The Brutons thought they were the strongest military force in the galaxy with their 6,000 vessels. They were about to learn that humanity had matched them, ship for ship, and had done it without anyone noticing. For 20 years, while playing the role of primitive newcomers, Earth had been preparing for the worst. James looked at the countdown timer on his console. The 72-hour deadline expired in 3 minutes. 3 minutes until humanity showed the galaxy what happens when you murder their diplomats. Open a channel to Drexos Prime, James ordered, his voice calm. Visual and tactical. Let War Commander Drex see exactly what he's created. The transmission was simple but devastating. It showed a tactical display of the Bruton home system with every planet, station, and military installation clearly marked. Surrounding them were countless red icons, each one representing a human warship in attack position. Then the transmission showed Earth itself. Not the peaceful blue marble the Council had seen in first contact photos, all green continents and white clouds. Instead, it showed Earth's history. The mushroom clouds. The wars. The near-extinction events. The centuries of violence that humanity had barely survived. And then it showed the unified world that emerged from those ashes, stronger and more determined than ever. A world that had learned one lesson better than any species in the galaxy. Never again would they be caught unprepared. Never again would they be victims. The timer reached 0. James took one last breath, thinking of Michael Reynolds and the family he'd left behind. Then he gave the order that would change galactic history. All ships, he said quietly. Begin. The Bruton home fleet died in 11 minutes. 11 minutes to destroy what had taken centuries to build. 11 minutes to end the reign of the galaxy's most feared military force. War Commander Drex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Fang, watching his tactical display with growing disbelief. Ships were disappearing from the screen faster than he could count them. Not just small vessels. Battlecruisers. Dreadnoughts. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were vanishing like smoke in the wind. Shields at 40%, his tactical officer screamed. Unknown weapon impact on Deck 7. Drex had fought in hundreds of battles. He'd seen weapons from every species in the galaxy. But these were different. The human vessels moved with impossible coordination, firing projectiles that reached 90% of light speed. Each impact carried the kinetic energy of a small star. His shields weren't built to handle that kind of force. Nobody's shields were. Return fire. Drex ordered. Target their lead vessel. The Crimson Fang's plasma cannons unleashed hell toward the nearest human ship. The bolts should have torn through its hull like paper. Instead, they splashed harmlessly against some kind of barrier Drex couldn't even detect on his sensors. Then he saw something that made his blood freeze. Small objects were launching from the human vessels. Thousands of them. They moved in perfect synchronization, weaving through Bruton fire like a school of fish. They were drones, AI-controlled, and they moved in patterns no living pilot could possibly match. Point defense. Shoot them down. Drex shouted. But there were too many. The drones swarmed over Bruton ships, targeting weapon systems and engines with surgical precision. Within seconds, dozens of his vessels were crippled, floating helplessly in space. Then the resonance cannons fired. Drex had never seen anything like it. A human cruiser targeted one of his battleships, and the weapon created some kind of localized disruption in space itself. The battleship didn't explode. It didn't burn. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a massive warship bristling with weapons. The next moment, nothing but an expanding cloud of particles that used to be matter. What in the void was that? His second officer whispered in horror. All ships retreat. Drex screamed into the communications array. Emergency slip space jump. Get out now. But the human forces had predicted that. They'd positioned their vessels to cut off every escape route. Ships that tried to jump found themselves trapped, their slipspace drives disrupted by something the Brutons didn't understand. Drex saw the UESN Retribution on his screen, the massive dreadnought that led the human fleet. It was turning toward him, its main weapon charging with a glow that looked like captured lightning. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted. Too late. The resonance cannon fired. Drex watched in frozen terror as the quantum disruption traveled toward his flagship. It hit the bow first and the metal simply disappeared. Then it consumed the forward decks, the crew quarters, the engineering sections. Everything in its path ceased to exist. The disruption reached the bridge in 2.3 seconds. War Commander Drex, terror of the galaxy, vanished without even time to scream. Aboard the UESN Retribution, Admiral James Cortez watched the tactical display with an expression carved from stone. There was no joy in this. No satisfaction. Just grim necessity. He'd seen too much war in his life to celebrate more death, even when that death was justified. Status on civilian targets? He asked Lieutenant Kyle Foster. Kyle checked his screens carefully. 0 civilian casualties, sir. All strikes are contained to military installations and vessels only. Our targeting AI is working perfectly. Every shot is confirmed against military databases before firing. Good, James said. What about survivors? We're picking up distress signals from multiple Bruton vessels. Medical teams are standing by to receive them. Rescue operations are already underway. James nodded. This was important. They weren't here to commit genocide. They were here to dismantle a military threat and deliver justice. There was a difference, and humanity would never cross that line. Continue the operation, James ordered. I want their military infrastructure dismantled within 48 hours. Every base, every weapons platform, every military shipyard. But Kyle, listened to me carefully. Sir? James turned to look his lieutenant in the eye. Any ship under my command that fires on a civilian transport, any vessel that targets non-military personnel, I want that ship immediately boarded and its captain court-martialed. I don't care if they're human or alien. I don't care what their excuse is. We are not them. Are we crystal clear? Crystal clear, sir. Across Bruton space, human forces executed their mission with surgical precision that terrified observers. They knew exactly where every military base was located. Every weapons depot. Every hidden shipyard. 20 years of patient intelligence gathering, and now it was paying off. They destroyed military targets with ruthless efficiency while leaving hospitals, schools, and civilian homes completely untouched. When Bruton soldiers surrendered, they were treated with dignity, given medical care, and processed according to something humans called the Geneva Conventions. On Harmony's Edge Station, Council Director Elena watched the reports flood in with growing horror. Her aide brought up screen after screen of data, and the pattern was undeniable. They're not attacking randomly, she whispered, her delicate hands trembling. They have intelligence on every Bruton military asset in the entire empire. Every single one. Her aide pulled up historical data, cross-referencing years of records. Director, I'm seeing something here. Humans have been cataloging Bruton military movements since first contact. 20 years of passive intelligence gathering. Every ship movement, every base construction, every weapons test. They recorded everything. And we never noticed? Elena felt sick. They wanted us to underestimate them. They played the role of primitive newcomers perfectly while preparing for exactly this scenario. A priority transmission arrived marked urgent. It was from the Bruton civilian government, what little remained of it with their military leadership dead or missing. They were requesting immediate surrender terms. Elena took a deep breath and opened a channel to Earth. This time, unlike her previous 16 hours of trying, it connected instantly. But the face that appeared on the screen wasn't Admiral Cortez. It was Jennifer Reynolds, wearing the uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps with the rank of Special Ambassador. The same rank her husband had held. Her face was calm, composed, but her eyes held something that made Elena shiver. Mrs. Reynolds, Elena began carefully, choosing each word with diplomatic precision. The Bruton civilian government wishes to discuss surrender terms. They're willing to. No. The single word cut through the air like a blade. I'm sorry? Elena stammered. 3 weeks after the first shot was fired, War Commander Drex found himself kneeling in chains aboard the USN Justice, a human prison transport vessel bound for Earth. The mighty warrior who had once commanded fleets and crushed rebellions was now just another prisoner, stripped of his armor and his dignity. He'd been captured on Drexos Prime's third moon, hiding in a reinforced bunker 2 miles underground. The bunker was supposed to be secret, known only to the highest levels of Bruton Command. But when the human assault team breached the entrance, their leader, Captain Robert Mitchell, had calmly informed Drex that human intelligence had identified this location 14 years ago. 14 years. They'd known about his escape plan before he'd even made it. The assault team had taken him alive without firing a single shot. They'd simply surrounded the bunker, cut off all exits and waited. When Drex's food and water ran out after 4 days, he'd had no choice but to surrender. Now, as guards escorted him down the sterile white corridors of the Justice toward the holding cells, Drex's pride finally broke into rage. "You cannot do this," he snarled, pulling against the restraints that held his massive arms behind his back. "I am a military commander of the Bruton Dominion. I acted within Bruton law and custom. You have no authority over me." Captain Robert Mitchell walked beside him, his expression calm and unbothered by the outburst. He was a smaller man than Drex, barely reaching the Bruton's shoulder, but he carried himself with quiet confidence. "You murdered an unarmed diplomat," Robert said in a measured tone. "On neutral ground. During protected treaty negotiations. That's a war crime under Earth law, Bruton law, and 17 different council statutes. We checked. Thoroughly. You're going to trial and you're going to face justice. The council will never allow this." Drex spat. "They'll demand my extradition. Bill." "The council has no say in this," Robert interrupted. "They had their chance to act. They chose to do nothing. So now it's our turn." "And they didn't?" "The council had no say at all." The trial began 2 days after Drex arrived on Earth. It was broadcast across every inhabited system in the galaxy through public channels that couldn't be blocked or censored. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds watched as humanity conducted what they called a fair trial. Attorney General Patricia Winters led Earth's legal team. She was a veteran prosecutor who'd spent 30 years putting war criminals behind bars back on Earth. Now she had the biggest case of her career, and she approached it with meticulous preparation. The evidence presentation took 6 full days. 6 days of documented atrocities. Bruton war crimes spanning 3 centuries. Massacres of civilian populations who refused to pay tribute. Entire species wiped out for daring to resist Bruton occupation. Planets burned. Children enslaved. Cultures erased from existence. And the Council had known. Every piece of evidence showed that the Galactic Council had known about these crimes and done nothing. They'd looked the other way, filed reports that went nowhere, and maintained their precious stability, while countless innocents suffered. The Council members sat in their chambers on Harmony's edge, forced to watch as their own corruption was laid bare before the entire galaxy. Some species representatives left the chamber in shame. Others sat frozen, unable to deny what the evidence showed. On the 7th day the verdict was ready. The jury consisted of 12 humans and 12 representatives from species that had been oppressed by the Brutons. 24 beings who understood exactly what Drex represented. They filed into the courtroom and the foreman read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. Murder. War crimes. Crimes against sentient life. Conspiracy to commit genocide. The sentence was read by Captain Emily Reynolds. She'd been a civilian just 3 weeks ago, a talented aerospace engineer working on peaceful space exploration projects. But the day her father died, she'd resigned from her job and enlisted in Earth's military. She'd risen through the ranks with frightening speed, driven by purpose and pain. Now she stood before the being who'd murdered her father, wearing her uniform with pride, and delivered his sentence. "War Commander Drex," she said, her voice steady despite the tears threatening to break through. "You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment on Earth. You will spend the remainder of your natural life confined to a cell where you cannot harm another living being. You will be treated humanely according to our laws. You will be fed adequately, given medical care as needed, and allowed basic dignity." Drex stared at her in disbelief, then burst into bitter laughter. "You call that justice? Your father is dead and you give me comfortable imprisonment? Why not execute me and be done with it? Show the galaxy what you really are." Emily took a step closer, looking up at the massive Bruton warrior without fear. Her voice dropped, but every word carried through the silent courtroom. "Because we're better than you." Those 5 words echoed across the galaxy. Drex was led away to his cell and the trial ended. Within hours, the Galactic Council transmitted an official message to Earth. It was carefully worded, full of diplomatic language and formal offers. They offered to take custody of War Commander Drex under Council authority. They offered humanity full Council membership with voting rights on all matters. They offered trade concessions, territory, resources, and apologies. Admiral James Cortez read the message in his office, thought for exactly 30 seconds and composed a reply. It was brief and to the point. The Council had 72 hours to deliver justice. You chose to do nothing. War Commander Drex will remain in human custody until his natural death. As for Council membership, we decline. Earth will join when the Council proves it deserves us, not the other way around. On Harmony's edge, Director Elena received the message with trembling hands. In her 300 years of diplomatic service, she'd seen species beg for Council membership. She'd seen species fight wars for the privilege. But never in all her centuries had she seen a species reject it. What do we do now? Her aide asked, his voice small and uncertain. Elena stared at the message, reading it again and again, and realized she had no answer. The galaxy had just changed in ways she couldn't predict. Across known space, 8 species that had lived under Bruton domination announced their withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Within days they signed mutual defense pacts with Earth. The human coalition was born not through conquest or threat, but through respect earned in fire and blood. The galaxy would never be the same. 5 years had passed since the day War Commander Drex murdered Ambassador Michael Reynolds. 5 years since humanity showed the galaxy what it truly meant to be human. The universe had changed in ways nobody could have predicted back then. The Reynolds Memorial Station now orbited the exact same coordinates where Harmony's Edge once stood. The old Council station had been decommissioned 2 years ago, deemed too tainted by the blood spilled on its floors. Nobody wanted to conduct diplomacy in a place where murder had gone unpunished. So humanity built something new in its place. The new station was massive, beautiful, and open to all species. It was humanity's statement to the galaxy about what diplomacy should actually be. Not a place where the strong intimidated the weak, but where all voices could be heard equally. Where justice actually meant something. Admiral James Cortez stood in the observation deck, now retired from active military service but still sharp as ever. His hair had gone completely gray in the past 5 years, and he walked with a slight limp from an old injury, but his eyes still held that same determined fire. Beside him stood Jennifer Reynolds, who'd returned to diplomatic service after taking 2 years to grieve and heal. Now she served as Earth's chief ambassador to the Human Coalition, the alliance of free species that had formed in the aftermath of the Bruton War. They both stared out at the stars in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of shared experience and mutual respect. Michael would have liked this, James said quietly, gesturing at the station around them. He always believed in places like this. Spaces where people could talk without fear. Jennifer nodded, a sad smile crossing her face. He believed in peace. Real peace, you know? Not the fragile kind that's maintained by fear and oppression. He used to say that true peace comes from mutual respect, not mutual terror. Do you think the Council understands that yet? James asked. Jennifer considered the question carefully. Some do. Director Elena has been pushing for reforms within the Council structure. The Whispers at least learned from what happened. They've been vocal advocates for changing how the Council operates. But others? She shrugged. They're still trying to figure out how they lost their grip on galactic power so quickly. A soft chime interrupted their conversation. The station's AI spoke in a calm, neutral voice that echoed through the observation deck. Unknown ship requesting docking clearance. They claim to represent first contact from the Peloran Collective. Scans indicate no weapons systems. They're requesting immediate diplomatic meeting with station leadership. Jennifer and James exchanged glances. Another species making first contact. This had become more common in recent years as word spread about the Human Coalition and its different approach to interstellar relations. What do you think? James asked, though he already knew Jennifer's answer. Let's find out who they are, she replied with a slight smile. An hour later, they sat in one of the station's diplomatic conference rooms. The space was designed to accommodate various species, with adjustable atmosphere, gravity, and seating arrangements. Across from them sat the Peloran delegation, and they were unlike anything humanity had encountered before. They were crystalline beings, their bodies composed of what looked like living glass that refracted light in stunning patterns. They communicated through controlled light emissions that pulsed through their forms in complex sequences. Ambassador Kate Morrison sat beside Jennifer, handling translation duties. She'd spent 3 years learning alien languages and had a natural gift for understanding nonverbal communication. Her translation device worked overtime to convert the Paloran light patterns into spoken words. "We come seeking knowledge of Earth and humanity," the Paloran representative pulsed, its body glowing with shifting colors. "The Galactic Council has warned us to approach carefully when dealing with humans. They say your species is dangerous." Jennifer's expression remained neutral, but James noticed the slight tightening around her eyes. "Did they say anything else?" she asked. The Paloran's colors shifted to what Kate's device interpreted as amusement. "Yes. They were very specific. They said, 'Whatever you do, treat the humans with respect.' This was presented as critical information for our survival." James leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. "Here's what you need to know about humanity, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. We will be peaceful. We will be fair in all our dealings. We will trade honestly and negotiate in good faith. We want to build friendships, not empires." Jennifer picked up where he left off, her tone shifting slightly harder. "But if you harm one of us, especially our diplomats, especially during peaceful proceedings like this, you will learn why Earth survived 10,000 years of its own violence before we ever reached the stars. We don't forget. We don't forgive attacks on our people. And we don't make empty threats." The Paloran's colors shifted through the entire visible spectrum as it processed this information. The room fell silent for a long moment. Finally, the crystalline being pulsed a response. Kate's device translated, and she couldn't help but laugh. "They say that seems perfectly reasonable. They appreciate our honesty and directness. They'd like to begin trade negotiations immediately. They also want to know if they can join the human coalition." As the meeting continued and details were discussed, Jennifer found herself looking out the conference room window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Bruton people were rebuilding their civilization without their military dictatorship. They'd embraced democracy, painful as the transition had been. The Galactic Council was slowly reforming, species by species learning that peace couldn't be built on silent complicity to injustice. And somewhere in the darkness between those distant stars, Earth's fleet remained ready. 6,000 ships hidden in stealth, watching and waiting. They were a promise to humanity's allies and a warning to anyone who might consider violence. Michael Reynolds hadn't died for nothing. His death had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo for generations to come. Humanity could be your greatest ally, standing beside you through the worst times, or your worst nightmare, coming for you with cold precision and unstoppable force. The choice was always yours to make. But you only got to make it once.